Batman versus Moon Knight. There are a whole lot of heroes in Marvel that you can argue are Marvel's Batman, but Moon Knight might be at the top of that list. Instead of day, well, he's facing off against the real Batman. If these two were to ever fight, well, who'd be coming out on top? Let's get into it. Bruce Wayne was the son of wealthy philanthropist Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne, and seemed destined for a life among the elite of the crime-ridden streets of Gotham City. That is, until his parents were shot dead in an alleyway while walking home. Forever scarred and changed by the loss, Bruce used his family's wealth to travel the world and acquire the skills, training, and technology he needed to begin his one-man war on the crime of Gotham City. He became Batman, a caped vigilante who crusades against the scum and filth of his home city's underworld. After becoming a founding member of the Justice League, Batman quickly became known as one of the most feared individuals in the DC universe, holding his own against superpowered criminals, monsters, and even gods, all in order to protect the innocent from those who would do them harm. And I want to give Batman his flowers here. The guy has trained himself until he's reached peak human physical levels, then basically shattered all records and became above peak human. He's strong enough to bench press over 1,000 pounds, rip through metal, or even knock around things that easily weigh multiple tons. And Bruce has no problem using all that strength of his punches or kicks. He's regularly knocking down walls or kicking through metal, regularly knocking out metahumans and sending people flying dozens of feet with just one strike. Batman might not necessarily look it, and he is supposed to be just a normal human, but you can kinda say that essentially, whatever Captain America can do, Batman can pull off something similar. Sure, Steve might be ultimately a bit stronger, but Bruce is well within that super soldier range of strength. Same with durability. Batman is incredibly durable, especially with his incredible armor. Now, out of his armor, Batman has taken some pretty nasty beatings, even an attack or two from Wonder Woman, so he's definitely tough. And his bat suit only adds on to that even more. He's regularly taken attacks from all sorts of opponents, some of whom are seriously strong. I'm talking your Venom-amped Banes, your Deathstrokes, even some much heavier hitters like Professor Zoom, Aquaman, or even Superman. And those last two were either mind-controlled or just royally pissed off, so they weren't necessarily holding back all that much. Batman's armor is also completely bulletproof. It's allowed him to survive some pretty massive explosions. Batman has even survived falling from the moon and crash landing down on the Earth. He's incredibly tough. And lastly, I feel like I should mention speed. Batman is incredibly fast and agile, far superior to even Olympic-level athletes. Like at this point, normal people simply move in slow motion to him. He can move so fast, he's just simply a blur, and Batman has routinely been able to dodge bullets and gunfire, even if it's automatic machine gun fire or bullets fired at literally point-blank range. Batman can still dodge all of it. He might still call himself just a normal human, but I think it's pretty clear that he's moved a little bit past that by now. But Batman isn't just in peak physical condition. That's not the only thing he's got going for him. He's also arguably the world's best fighter. And if you don't want to put him at the tippy top, well, you can count on one hand the people who are better than him. He's trained to perfection and become a master in every form of combat that there is. He can react and fight without even thinking, and is trained to be able to predict an opponent's move to the point where he knows his opponent's next move before even they do. He's an expert in every single fighting style known to man, a lot of other alien fighting styles too, and so he can quickly and effortlessly switch between fighting styles on the fly or to perfectly counter and take down an opponent. He's been able to regularly fight against some of the best martial artists in the world, like Lady Shiva, Bronze Tiger, Owlman, even Karate Kid. And you know what? He oftentimes wins these fights, like he's regularly been tested by the best assassins and martial artists in the world. Ra's al Ghul and Lady Shiva are constantly trying to test Batman with the best of the best, and they usually pick the most inopportune times, like when Batman is off his game or recovering from grievous injuries. But Batman still tends to come out on top every single time. There's a reason why he's known as the best of the best. He also comes equipped with pretty much every weapon and gadget you could possibly imagine, outside of guns and stuff, of course. He's got batarangs, his signature weapon, and he's probably one of the world's best shots when it comes to throwing them. He's got some pretty serious explosives, some of which can even stagger and knock back Kryptonians. He's got electrical weapons powerful enough to send out tens of thousands of volts, sonic grenades, even knockout gas or tranks that can put down superhumans. Not to mention, Batman is a literal super genius. He's a brilliant tactician, a master planner and strategist. He's routinely able to take down bigger or more powerful threats simply because he outthinks them. There's a reason why, even though he's still just a human, Batman is one of the most respected heroes and feared men on the planet. It's 'cause he's the Batman. While on a mission in Sudan, the mercenary Mark Spector was left for dead in the desert by a ruthless African general, but was afterwards resurrected by the ancient Egyptian moon god Khonshu in exchange for being his avatar on Earth. Mark would later return to New York City and became the vigilante known as the Moon Knight. The problem is Mark Spector possesses multiple personalities, such as the millionaire entrepreneur Stephen Grant and cab driver Jake Lockley, and suffers from dissociative identity disorder, making him one of the most unstable and volatile heroes that you've ever seen. Now, Moon Knight does in fact have superpowers, but it does also depend on how much Khonshu is willing to give him at the moment, which in turn depends on how willing Moon Knight is to being the fist of Khonshu. It's gone up to the point where Moon Knight has become an Avengers level threat, but for the most part, even with amps from the Moon or Khonshu, Moon Knight is just a powerful street level hero. He's strong enough to overpower pretty much anyone he comes across, regularly one-shotting opponents, even overpowering superhumans, knocking them around just as easily. He can plow through walls, destroy vehicles, break metal. Pretty much he's a one-man wrecking crew. He's got the strength to back it up. Moon Knight's also certifiably insane. And because of that, well, he's able to take a whole lot of punishment, and not a lot of attacks actually seem to faze him all that much. He's taken all sorts of punches and hits, even up to the point where he's taken hits from Venom or the Hulk. Sometimes he doesn't even register being stabbed or slashed or shot. He's been completely fine taking point-blank explosions. It really doesn't hurt. That Moon Knight has some seriously tough armor. Whether you're talking his adamantium armor or the carbonadium suit, Moon Knight is able to take a lot of attacks, and his suit is just way too durable for it to even faze him. And anything that does end up hurting him, well, Moon Knight has the endurance and willpower to keep on fighting through anything. He's a very, very tough man to put down in a fight. He's also very, very fast. He's able to not just casually dodge bullets, but Moon Knight is even so skilled and fast, he's able to block bullets or even cut them in half as they're coming his way. Mark is also a very skilled fighter, with it being said multiple times that he's versatile in all martial arts and has mastered every weapon conceived by man. Several high-skilled fighters have complimented him on his skill before, and Moon Knight's able to take down whole groups of people, becoming a one-man army in a fight, even battling against whole groups of superhumans all by himself. He's skilled enough to fight against Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Black Panther. But the scariest thing about Moon Knight is just that he is an absolutely brutal fighter, will do anything and everything it takes to put his opponent down. Taskmaster one time said that fighting Moon Knight is like battling a hollow point bullet. He's gonna go through you and tear you apart without a single concern about how he's gonna look when he comes out the other side. And because of that, Moon Knight is the one guy who Taskmaster is actually scared to copy his fighting style. Lastly, while Moon Knight has a whole bunch of gear and weapons at his disposal, he's got his crescent darts, which are basically his version of batarangs, while the normal ones are sharp enough to pierce the Hulk. He's also got a whole wide range of explosive ones, or gas ones, or even adamantium ones. And he's got his truncheon, which he can also instantly transform into nunchucks or a bow staff, and Moon Knight is dangerously efficient with his weapon in his hand. So, who wins? Well, let's break it down. Now, Moon Knight is in a lot of ways Marvel's Batman. Now, I know you can say that about a lot of characters in Marvel, but Moon Knight is pretty darn close. And so, because of that, well, they're pretty similar characters. For example, both are ridiculously strong, extending well into super soldier range if we're being honest. And they've both done very similar things, regularly one-shotting anyone they come across, breaking metal in the palm of their hands, so on and so forth. Edge definitely goes to Moon Knight if you want to say that Khonshu is amping him in this fight, but under most normal conditions, Batman is stronger. Based on feats alone, he's well within the multi-ton range, probably a true rival to people like Captain America and Black Panther, and both those guys have a strength edge over Moon Knight. I'd pretty confidently say that Batman does as well. Durability is a bit closer though, may even be a true toss-up, and that's in large part because of Moon Knight's armor and his insanity. I mean, for starters, for Mark, you're talking about armor made out of some of the toughest metal known to man. Yeah, Batman's armor is great too, don't want to take anything away from the Dark Knight, but the kicker is that Moon Knight has his armor and he's certifiable. Even when Batman targets weak spots in the armor or manages to hurt Moon Knight, well, he's not actually going to be hurting him because Moon Knight is too crazy to even feel the pain. And sure, Bruce definitely has plenty of experience fighting crazy people, but Moon Knight's still consistently proven that he is one tough SOB and a very, very hard man to actually put down in a fight. Then as for speed, well, they're both lightning fast, regularly bullet timing and speed blitzing opponents. Edge goes to Batman though, as he's just been able to more regularly react to super speedsters, and even arguably light speed attacks. Moon Knight hasn't done that, or at least not as consistently as Batman. So physically, Edge goes to Batman, but it's closer than you'd think. Moon Knight is really no pushover. But then it kinda gets away from Mark when you're talking about fighting skill and martial arts ability, because as good as Moon Knight is, he doesn't hold a candle to Batman. Very, very few people do. Moon Knight is a skilled and formidable fighter, a guy who's trained in every fighting style and weapon known to man. But he's battling against a man who's mastered every fighting style, and then some, even knowing countless fighting styles and techniques that other martial arts masters, like Moon Knight, have never even heard of before. Batman is arguably the most skilled fighter on DC Earth, and if you don't want to put him in that number 1 spot, probably the lowest you could drop him would be the number 2 spot. You definitely can't put him out of the top 3. And as for Moon Knight, well, honestly, might be a stretch to even put Moon Knight in the top 10 best fighters for Marvel. You're just talking about a real big difference in skill and ability here. That's not taking anything away from Moon Knight. It's just that Batman is just that good. Now, what Moon Knight has going for him is that he pretty much has enough gear and weapons to counter Batman's own. Bruce would have to dig pretty deep into the utility belt to find things that Moon Knight doesn't also have on him. And then Moon Knight is legitimately insane. And along with that insanity comes a whole lot of brutality. And let's just say, a rather unorthodox way to approach fights. Like Taskmaster wasn't kidding when he said that Moon Knight didn't care what happened to him in a fight, as long as he put his opponent down. I mean, he's legitimately, purposely crashed his helicopter into buildings or other helicopters just to prove a point. And then in an actual fist fight, not only is Mark one of the most brutal fighters you've ever seen, he's carved off a man's own face before, but he's also one of the most reckless fighters out there. He'll let himself get hit several times over because he knows that it will lead to the perfect opening for counterattacks. Moon Knight can even switch between his different personalities throughout a fight, with each personality having their own unique fighting style. And he can do that and try and confuse Batman in that way. But again, this isn't anything that Batman hasn't encountered before. I mean, his main villain is an insane man. Half his rogues gallery are just as insane and just as brutal. Batman has trained his whole life to be able to predict an opponent's next move, knowing their next move before even they do. And if you want to argue that Moon Knight is too unpredictable for Batman to predict, well, Bruce is also trained to study their body language, the noise, even the air patterns around them, to predict their next move. So, he'll be able to know what Moon Knight's gonna be doing. And even if Moon Knight can switch up fighting styles throughout the fight, Batman is able to pretty much instantly recognize every fighting style used against him, then adapt to the perfect counter for that fighting style. Batman's also got plenty of experience fighting against people like Moon Knight, because he's got plenty of experience fighting against people like himself. Like, just to name a few, Deathstroke, Ghostmaker, Lady Shiva or Ra's al Ghul, or even other members of the Bat family like Nightwing or Red Hood. Batman's fought and beat all of them before. Moon Knight isn't really going to be anything new to him. And while Moon Knight is more aggressive and brutal, he's also more reckless, leaves himself open to attacks, and even allows himself to get hit. None of which is really good when facing off against Batman. It will be a super cool fight to see play out, and depending on the unknown Khonshu factor, you can definitely make an argument for Moon Knight to win. But for the most part, well, Batman is better in pretty much every way and should be taking this fight, no question. Batman wins.